Hello everybody, and welcome to our video series on the final days of Jesus. Before we get really deep into this series, I want y'all to understand a few things that are really important. First of all, the Gospels are written as individual accounts of what the writers saw personally or what they gathered from primary sources. Second, even though they were written as individual accounts, they harmonize together. What may appear as a contradiction is merely the same narrative, but from a different perspective. For example, if 4 people saw an accident take place, and you have 4 different accounts of what took place based upon personal perception and thinking. The same is here with the 4 Gospels. Lastly, Matthew was a Jew himself, writing primarily to Jews, so we're going to find him using Jewish terms and assuming a lot. Mark was written to the Gentiles in Rome and was more than likely Peter's perspective of the whole thing. Luke was a Gentile doctor, writing about a suffering Savior. And John was a beloved disciple of Christ and focuses on Christ's deity and qualifications to be able to die as the Lamb of God. The book provides Jesus' entire final week, but our study is going to pick up on day 4. Jesus began his preparations for the Passover on Thursday. Jesus would have his very last supper, and in many ways there was a lot of lasts for Jesus that night. This would not only be his last meal, but this would be his last meal with his disciples, his last meal in his pre-glorified body, and the final Passover meal of the Old Covenant. What the Passover meal represented to the Jewish people, Christ was getting ready to fulfill, as he would be the last lamb to atone for the sins of man. The symbolism here is great. And in Matthew 26, and Mark 14, and Luke 22, they cover Christ's preparation for the Passover meal. And also in those chapters, and in John 13 and 14, that covers the Passover meal itself. The Passover meal took place in the evening because the Jewish calendar reckoning of a day began at nightfall until the next nightfall. The preparations for the meal took place on a Wednesday, while the Passover meal itself took place on what we would consider Wednesday night, but the Jewish people considered Thursday already. Typical eating arrangements would have had 3 padded couches arranged in an upside-down U-shaped fashion. About 3 or 4 people would sit on each couch as they reclined on their left side, propped up on their left elbow, with their feet pointing outward while eating with their right hand. Several key elements are told through the Gospel writers. First, Christ deals with Judas as the betrayer, with no one really catching it. Also, Jesus washes his disciples' feet as an act of service and modeling for servant leadership. This foot washing is only recorded for us in John. It was customary for a servant to be present to wash everyone's feet. It could be assumed that because of all of the things that were going on, that finding a servant may have been neglected, but honestly, I think Jesus probably did this on purpose. The disciples decided that they were not going to mess with it, and they were going to eat anyway. But here's the thing, not one of them offered to wash feet except for Jesus. Jesus demonstrated a servant spirit as well as a slight rebuke because no one else was willing to do it. True leadership is servant leadership. Have you ever noticed a boss fulfilling a small task when no one else was there to do it? That's servant leadership. Have you ever noticed a boss allowing a task to go unfulfilled because no one was there to do it? That is what we call human nature. We like to take the easiest road possible while delegating absolutely is necessary for any leader. There comes a time when every leader needs to perform tasks that are on the bottom of everyone's list. Christ also got his point across by explaining to his disciples, as they were arguing about who was going to be great in God's kingdom, that true leadership is not to be like the Roman leaders that they're used to seeing, who lord over people. He teaches them that true leadership is servant leadership. And only those who serve will be great. The most humbling lesson that Jesus demonstrates is washing the feet of the one who has and would betray him. The next element is Christ's farewell discourse in John 13:31 through John 14:31. During this discourse, Jesus is patient and answers several questions that the disciples have. They have questions about why they can't follow him to where he's going. He answers questions regarding how they will know the way to where he's going. He answers their questions regarding why Jesus will reveal himself only to his disciples and not the entire world. It's also in this discourse when he predicts Peter's denial. Jesus then transitions the scene by taking them to the Garden of Gethsemane. The last element is found in the Garden of Gethsemane, where we find the longest recorded prayer of Jesus' ministry in John 17. This prayer has been called the high priestly prayer of Jesus, and it takes place immediately before his arrest. In this prayer, Jesus prays for himself, and then he prays for his disciples, and then he prays for future leaders. Tomorrow, we'll discuss the crucifixion and the death